Egotism. Egotism is a lie in action. It supposes that the egotist's whims and passions and instinctual desires take precedence over the moral law, the brotherhood of other human beings, and the will of God Himself. The egotist is like a pendulum asserting its rights against the clocks, or a cloud in rebellion against the sky, or an arm insisting that it will ignore the body of which it is a part. The egotist, doing only what his own selfish desires proclaim, ends up by hating everything he does. He is like the child in the progressive school who wailed, "Do I always have to do what I want?" Self will leads, in time, to hatred of the self. A little boy who has eaten all the ice cream, meant for the whole family, comes to hate the very sight of that kind of ice cream, and mingled with his merely animal, conditioned hatred of the food, is a moral loathing of himself for having committed the sin of greed. This self-hatred is the moral penalty we pay for gluttony, as the distaste for ice cream is the physical, animal effect of the same offense. Men who are sick with self-disgust instinctively pound their breasts, as if to drive out evil from the inner citadel of their souls. Atheists are more prone to this self-loathing than the religious man, since they do not recognize the mercy and love of God, who will cure us of our self-disgusts. They may carry their despair of self to the final stage of suicide. Self-destruction is a projection, an external shadowing of the inner tragedy, in which the small self has challenged all that is greater than it and, sickened by the effects of this rebellion, has come to an unnatural hatred of its life. Both Peter and Judas rebelled against life when they denied our Lord. Both of them had been warned against such a revolt. Both of them were called devils because of their offense, and both repented. But Judas repented unto himself, turned his own ego back upon itself in the futile agony of despair. Peter, repenting unto his Lord, emptied himself of evil through humility and regained joy. Only submission of the self to something higher than self can cure despair, for such humility empties the soul of both pride and self-judgment, making room for the influx of divine truth and love. He that humbleth himself shall be exalted. He that exalteth himself shall be humbled. But self-hatred is exaltation of the self as the final, bitter judge. Until the for sale sign is hung on a soul emptied of preoccupation with the self, the divine tenant cannot move in. One test of true humility is our attitude towards praise. Anyone who loves publicity is proud, is seeking to be justified before men, for the humble man refers all praise to God. If he has gifts, he knows that God gave them to him, and that they must be used to serve their real owner. He is like a window which is content to let God's sunlight shine through it, with no idea that the light is its own creation. A humble man accepts both praise and blame as gifts from God. Both the bitter and the sweet are sent by one who loves him. As Job said, "The Lord gives, the Lord takes away, praised be the Lord." But the egotist cannot forget himself. Even though he suspects and resents his own smallness, he thinks he can conceal this inferiority by always boasting of himself. The humble man is God-surrendered, safe from despair, because he knows that he is loved by love itself. The egotist constantly complains that others do not love him enough, and he fails to see that this is a result of his own centeredness on self. His misery, like almost every other form of unhappiness, comes from a stubborn refusal to give up his own self-will. Our happiest times are those in which we forget ourselves, usually in being kind to someone else. That tiny moment of self-abdication is an act of true humility. The man who loses himself finds himself and finds his happiness. Self-hatred and despair are diseases to which only egotists are prone. The cure for them is always the same: humility. And that means being less in love with ourselves than we are with God.